think you do the intro, right?
Welcome to Hype as Fuck. Give everyone just a minute or two to log on.
Of course.
But in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our guest. I am here with Jake Feldman, also known as JWELL.
Hello, hello.
A lot of you are familiar with him. He's been on quite a few of our recent strange music related tours, and if you know, you know.
Absolutely. I've been in the underground, which is something I think with my DC and like Washington family is a lot of where they don't understand like some of the hip hop expressiveness or like Kendrick Lamar references or things like that. It's just not to, it's okay. It's just not to their interests and stuff. And so, a lot of this spurred from the fact that, I was misdiagnosed, I believe, because I'm going to have a doctor do it, right? But I'm 99% sure, otherwise I wouldn't have gone through all these lengths. I was misdiagnosed with bipolar syndrome in 2021 when I was helping Chris Calico and Stevie Stone launch their labels when they were leaving Strange, and was spent 17 days in a psych ward. And there's nothing wrong with being bipolar or having a mental illness, but it is the number one thing that autism, like high functioning, is misdiagnosed with, and that is actually what I believe to be my diagnosis at this point. And I've been speaking with doctors and people in the autistic community about that, because a lot of the excitement that has come from my posting is that my communication styles are unorthodox, and there was a greater means to why I was doing that. And I certainly didn't, some of the social cue things of it, they actually went exactly kind of how I thought, minus the fact that certain people I tried to fully disclose what was going on. I thought they would understand sooner, but, thankfully and very positively, my mother actually, against everyone's advice, came and saw me. And she was like, do you want to go to breakfast? She like yelled up at my balcony. I was just like, sure, why not? Like, I love you, Mom. Like, that's why I keep writing it and all these posts. Like, I love my whole family. That's not even at all what this is about. And what it is about is that, my father died actually on Christmas, Christmas morning, 2020, suddenly to COVID. And I had just been working with Chris Calico and Stevie Stone, and I'd gotten to know Strange through Jerry Robinson and Tara, because we were friends in New York. And I was actually one of the first people that Jerry even told that he signed to Strange. And I was super excited for him, because even though in New York City, Strange music is not the hip hop predominant thing, I grew up as a big Strange fan. And so I was just like, hell yeah, dude, like, good for you, And I was in charge of helping them launch Twitch and helping Chris launch Twitch and Yubi, and Travis and I even spoke about tech doing it at a different point. And so, I was very deeply rooted in a lot of digital marketing communities, and Strange being one of the cooler people I've certainly worked with. And so a lot of times when things start going viral, people don't realize that it's my intention. In 2021, I made a lot of mistakes because as an artist, I was a little too hardcore, and I lied about something really egregious, and I was like, let me just document my drug addiction live. Like, that makes sense. Like, Eminem did it. I was just like, okay, like, let's just take the videos and do it, right? And everyone's like, oh my god, Jake, like, this sweet boy from private school, like, what happened? I'm just like, what do you mean? I've been rapping. It's just like, so there was this disconnect that I actually really didn't think about, where I was just like, well, everyone's watching, isn't that the point, right? Because I'm thinking about my music and my art, and everyone else is like, oh my god, like, you look like which I did, I looked horrible, look like shit, you've been doing this, that. And I'm just like, nah, dude, music. And everyone's like, ooh, right? And so that was something that I really kind of tried to pay attention to before I ever did another personal viral campaign, because there's never been a rapper from Georgetown before. I grew up a block away from George Washington's house, Tudor Place. Kennedys were down the block. And so in DC, in the political culture, there's like things that you don't talk about, you don't do, you're supposed to be polite, right? I'm just like, well, these just aren't gonna mix, and that's where a lot of this disruption's been coming from. And so the root of why this ended up happening was that I finally kind of find...
1 second here to start off.
Yeah, all good.
Yeah, so why don't you tell everyone, we know you're from DC. How old?
How old am I? I'm 29. Yeah. I'm 29 years old, and I left home at 15 to go to military school at Culver Academy. which was an amazing place. I still wear the ring. And yeah, I grew up. I was actually born and raised in the city. It was my first tattoo was the DC flag, and so I've been rapping since I was 12. So 17 years I've been doing this, which is kind of crazy.
Okay, that caught me up. Those were my next follow-up
Nope,
questions.
all good, all good. So I really like rapping. I think everyone that knows me knows that. And you know, as an artist, like one of the things that I noticed in the industry was that there were a lot of rights issues, and I ended up studying, like, you know, I'm certainly not a lawyer, but I ended up having to study a lot of law for publishing and like looking at how the labels work. So I was just like, like everyone's this is a tough business, right? And it's one of the reasons I'm so sensitive to it. But what had ended up occurring with this was that the trust lawyers, like when I had never taken any money from the trust directly at all since my dad died. And I had tried for the first time in December of 2022, and the lawyer tried to have me, had ended up someone calling me and ended up wanting me to walk into a psych ward. And they're like, you need to be medically examined. I was just like, what? I wrote an email saying that you guys are supposed to refund something for my rehab because it's a health thing, and I paid for my own rehab. So I was just like, what? You know, I was just like, I don't even understand what you, like, okay. And so they had me sign an indemnification of accounting, right? Which means that I can't sue them over the books. Now in music, if someone doesn't let you look at the books, like the accounting where the money's been, that's a problem. And I'm certainly not going to like openly accuse them like on that way. But I did note with a lawyer that that was under duress, right? Because I was just like, I didn't even ask y'all about accounting. That's suspect. Okay, like whatever. And I let it go because I really just wanted to make sure that finances were straight for relaunching some of my digital marketing stuff. And you know, my girlfriend Sabrina, like she has a 2-year-old. We live together. I'm just like, hey guys, like, would be nice to use the thing that my dad left me. If that's cool, right? Maybe, I don't know. No one wants, and you know, the lawyers never even had the decency to pick up the phone and like call me, which is crazy. And that just continued to spiral where every time I tried to ask for something or do something, they're like, I think you need to be institutionalized. I'm just like, dear fucking God. Like, I mean, how can you function like that, right? And it made me scared to even start talking or posting because if you're having like a manic episode, which again, there's nothing wrong with being bipolar, but if you're having a manic episode and you start communicating rapidly, you start doing a lot of things that aren't normal. And I think anyone in the strange community can understand that most of us just aren't normal. You know, we're just different people. And whatever. I'm just like, oh my God, I can't do anything. Can't cry, can't talk fast, can't can't pace. I'm just like, can't pace. Like I like to think in pace. It's just like, oh my God, you know. So it became something where I had to, when they were trying to like Britney, I mean they still are, but they were trying to like Britney Spears me, right? Where I would have a what's it called, a care manager, like a nurse, right? Like I'd have a nurse come to the house, like drug test me, be like, all right, Jake, like it's time to take your medicine. I'd be like, haven't been on medicine in 8 months, which my doctor took me off of, right? And so it's something where I'm just like, what is going on your guys' side? And so what I ended up doing was I designed a campaign because I'm a big fan of James Bond movies, of A Few Good Men, of like you know, my dad. I grew up watching all these movies, and I write for TV and film. So I started to think the campaign as it was a rights thing. I was like, all right, I'll make it look like a secret agent or cryptic messages and certain things. So I broke up and fractionalized a lot of the posting because I was time stamping certain things in case things went to court, because I was like, this needs to be documented here. This needs to be here. I know people are going to think I'm being really mean or that I'm being nuts. But the thing is, and as the narrative has shifted, it did end up going the way I thought, minus my mom showing up, which was literally just such a blessing and made me super happy. In fact, the guy that was the biggest hater commented on Instagram and was like, you know, what a fucking plot twist. And I was like, no kidding. And, you know, it was something where the whole time I'm like, I promise you guys, like, you know, Scout's honor that I love you. But it's just, I can't, you know, at one point the trust's like, you can't post online about this. And I'm just like, but I have an album to sell. Like, if you start here, like, where, you give an inch, like, where does this keep going? Right. And
Well,
then what ended up happening is a lawyer sent me
is
something where, oh, sorry,
place.
what's up?
Social media is such an odd place. I mean, so many
Totally.
things can be taken so out of context.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
un
I mean,
so
and it's something,
you can literally post "Have a good day" and
right.
offense.
Oh,
You know,
that's where I knew people were gonna unfollow me, unfriend me. People were gonna be like, "What are you doing?" I'm just like, "I promise, I'm doing the right thing. I promise, I promise." But because of the psych ward incident, right? Like, I've always been known as like a smart person, but the line between genius and insanity is a real thin one, right? And then ended up knocking me over to where like people just are like, "Oh, you're crazy," and I'm like, "No, no, I'm not. I was a drug addict in 2021. I take responsibility for that. I was very hurtful in part of the campaign because Eminem was one of my big inspirations, and I was adding bullies, right? People I thought bullied me, or did. Some of them did with their full name. And the reason I did that is because he won the lawsuit against the guy where it was like D'Angelo Bailey shoved me into lockers after school and was obnoxious. And the judge had him win in a landslide. And so the precedent for using someone's full name, right, as a bully in law was that the rapper was fine. And so I was like, okay, cool, right? And so there was actually a lot of stuff on the underlining of it because I don't, I've been around a lot of like street homies and rappers that have had to break the law for different reasons, but I personally try not to do it because my parents were able to afford me the ability not to. I don't judge anyone that has to do things to support their family, and it's not my business to talk about it. But, you know, it just became something where I was like, damn, I wasn't able to really explain myself properly, and didn't take the time to, in 2021. And now with what's going on, especially with my mom, which I'm so thrilled, she came and she's like, look, we just need to like get a resolution. I was like, I agree. I've been trying to say it, but unfortunately, when all the lawyers think I'm fucking insane, I'm in a really tough spot. And even the song that I dropped called where it says whistleblow, what a whistleblower does in politics, right, is that there's a shout out to the Netherlands. There is a conspiracy theory, and they blow the whistle on it. The only conspiracy theory I was blowing the whistle on is I'm not crazy. That's it. I mean, that was what all of this was about, right? And that, yes, I can be expressive. Yes, I can use words that can be hurtful or trigger tears. I cried a bunch while I was writing some of these letters and things and songs because I was like, I can't believe I have to do this. You know what I mean? I mean, and it's one of the things I talk to Calico a lot, where the things that he or I have gone through, because we'll talk a lot about like our minds and like how to think and stuff, and like I just study Chris's music all the time. I'm just like, you're so good at this, bro. And it's something that I realized that it was fine to no they that's even I appreciate that summary where you're saying people don't like the truth coming out. I mean, I put on the whistleblower thing from A Few Good Men, the movie. you know the Tom Cruise is yelling at the lieutenant colonel, who was on trial for hazing someone to death, and that's the famous quote that a lot of people know if they haven't seen the movie: is "You can't handle the truth." Right? And his lawyer is going to him like, "You don't need to answer that." And he's like, "I'm gonna answer." He's like, "I did it," and he was like, "I was at war and I did it and I do it again." They're like, "Well, you're going to jail." He's like, "I don't give a fuck," right? And it's something crazy where my girlfriend is a soldier, like, God bless, right? She's an enlisted member of the Guardian in the Space Force, and it's something I have a huge respect because I grew up in the Capitol for proper government, not corrupt, right? Not corrupt police, but the people that actually are there because they care about other people, right? And they want to be in a position to help protect them and empower them, right? Like I'm always really careful with people, even my hip hop homies, where they're like, "Oh, like fuck the cops." It's like, fuck the bad cops. Yeah, fuck them. But I was like, if grandma is down the street getting mugged and she calls the police, it's really not fuck the cops. Like, thank God that grandma didn't get mugged, you know? And you have to remove yourself from the situation sometimes and realize that institutions aren't inherently evil, but that corruption is possible, right? And so, like, when I have lawyers being like, we don't like the way you speak to us, so you must be crazy because we're a lawyer. I'm like, no, no. Like, I just talk expressively. I've read a lot of books. It's why I love songwriting. It's why I got into hip hop. You know, it was all the stories and listening to M and Pac and Nas and Jay, and like how much oppression they had to overcome or bullying they had to overcome through their music. Why I love Strange and Chris and like Stone and like, you know, people who use. I talk to Stevie about this all the time. He sent me a text actually earlier today where he's like, I'm so happy to see this photo of you and your mom. Like, I've been praying for you. I love you, bro. It's like, I love you too. Like, I'm holding it down. I know this has been confusing for people because 99% of the time when you see someone posting like this, it could be an episode. It could be someone kind of losing their rocker. But for me, I painted it that way intentionally because people, my family truly wasn't listening to the fact that I was trying to be like, the lawyers are fucking up, you know? And I have a lot of like love for them where I had never had a history of mental illness. None of my family, my mother, brother, like we didn't know how to deal with the bipolar stuff, right? I certainly didn't. I was allergic to lithium in the psych ward, and I talked to my mom about that. Where you know I could see she laughed and she's like, "Oh God, you know, like how horrible is that?" Where it took the doctors 3 days to believe me that I was allergic. I broke out in hives. I was like, "Guys, I'm allergic. Like you're poisoning me, right?" And they're like, "Nah, like you're crazy. Like we'll see." Like I was like, "Can we get an allergy test?" 3 days later, they're like, "Oh, it turns out you're allergic." Like, and they take me off. Right. And so the reason that the psych ward was so traumatic for me is I'm sitting there watching people that did actually need that help. Right. They were really, really unstable and sick. I had a schizophrenic that kept talking to me like, the eagle has landed. I'm like, what does that mean? Right. Like, I had never talked to a schizophrenic person at that level before. So I'm like, is he talking to me in code? Like what are you like, you know, I'm getting driven nuts by being around all these people because I was just like, I don't like why am I here, right? I mean another one was I could give you 20 examples of this where I ended up taking the medicine to leave, you know, and because my family was so upset, and it was I stayed on it for a year, even on tour with Stone, where the Depakote would cause me to, because it was originally seizure medicine, for my hands to shake and weight gain. And I've never had that physical sensation in my life. And it wasn't until August when I had met Sabrina where I was like, I really do think there's something wrong with this medicine. Not because it doesn't help bipolar people, but because my body was having these really bad reactions. But I stayed on it because there's this whole thing about bipolar people coming off of medicine and not wanting to take it anymore. And I'm like, well, crap. I don't want to like have an episode. So I'm like stuck being like, is it working? Is it not? And I was working with my psychiatrist, like God bless her, for over a year to lower the doses to the point where I was comfortable to come off of it. And I'm really thankful that I did over the last 8 months. And I did have a nervous system shut down on March 12th, where I ended up taking Seroquel again. And I talked to Calico about it, where he was like, you know, there's no shame in like taking medicine. I was like, no, of course not. I couldn't sleep. I was under so much stress and pressure from relaunching my business. And, you know, Social Turtle has $1 million eval on the table right now that I can't, if I have one lawyer telling me that my signature is no good, right? And I go sign an investment deal, all my clients, all the people I'm working with, everything that's going on from anyone, Dennis Rodman, for example, is one of my clients right now for working on a TV show. It would jeopardize everything. And so the reason I've been so stubborn about it, as it would appear to my family, was because, you know, like they're my family. Like I don't always talk to them about this stuff. Like I'm just literally just talking about family stuff. And it put me in this really tough position where I had to functionally do a campaign that people were going to hate me for, because I was gonna have to be like, look at what all these people are doing to me. Look at this, and cause attention to rise. Mm-hmm. Having the history of 2021 where I did lie once, right? All the rest of it was fine. But the I wouldn't say fine, but it was based in truth. There was one thing that was just a hard lie, and it was something that he forgave me for, and it's been even in that record I talk about, because I accused it of something that was so heinous that he my friend should never have forgiven me. He did, and one of the greatest gifts he's ever given me is inviting me to his wedding. So I want to clear that in front of everyone. I don't want there to be a single person that thinks that he did what I accused him of to me, because it was a lie and it was wrong. I'll fix that.
Well, and you know what?
Mm-hmm.
Bottom line, every single person, you know what? If we are going to be judged for the rest of our life on one mistake, that's
right.
That's something that other person and those people judging need to deal with, because that's not something that the human race is meant to do. That is
We're not
not
perfect.
No, none of us, not a single one of us on this planet is perfect.
Right.
And if you think you are the one who needs help.
100, right. And that's the thing is, like, I'm like, for example, I'm a person of faith. Like, I believe in God. I can't even talk about God publicly without it being accused of a bipolar episode. I'm just like, guys, not to be a nerd here, but that's literally why America was founded. That's why these people left England, was for religious prosecution, and they came over here on those boats. That didn't work very well, right? Like, I'm literally just like, oh my God. And it's tough, because honestly, like, my faith is why I was able to, like, endure being hated. Like, I was just like, all right, or like, Father, forgive them because they know not what they do. Like, I mean, we've kicked it plenty of times in person. Like, I'm just not a mean person. Like, I had to make this a character I was playing, right? Right. Like, even with my tattoo with Chris, Agent 001, like, this is a character I'm playing to get the desired results from the audience. Because if I get so personal with it that these lawyers are coming to Britney Spears me, I get scared, I get nervous like people normally would. I mean it's so much pressure, right? And I don't want to be mean or yelling at people, so I have to make it a game. And that's even where the Turtleless, like, thing and the gamification process, I sent rules to certain people. I mean, the whole time I was documenting it as a game, because I was like, y'all are putting me under a lot of stress. I'm telling you, I'm not nuts. I'm just literally, I read and I pay attention, and now I have to do what I do best, which is perform. And I have to do it in a way where, because I was deemed crazy, like, my education and everything I've studied became just jeopardized, right? Like, no one would, from the DC community, no one would listen, right? They're trying to talk to me about health plans, and I graduated school with sociology. Like, I was gonna be a social worker if music didn't work out, because it's a passion of mine. I love helping people, especially in mental health, right? I mean, we've had conversations about it, and I've had it with many, where Chris and anyone, where I always check in with people about that, because I've had many battles, But I got sober, got a distro deal with Universal and Bungalow, and I'm launching my own label, my debut album. And I'm just like, this is not the time in my life I want to get Britney Spears. Like, I mean, I don't want to ever do it, but certainly not right now. Maybe after that label, if I lose our album, but, like, please, at least let me get my debut out. Oh my God. And so, I mean, that's without diving into too much of the specifics of why I said what or anything like that. That was really the bottom line, right? Is that I got put into a horrible position from my own actions that started it. But then being judged and not forgiven or given an opportunity to at least have my words at value, right? And so it's why I had to go to these types of lengths, because ultimately, I as a strategist, as my business, I can't run a business where people are like, every time I do something, you're crazy, right? It would devalue 10 years of work in entertainment. And so, I'm really thankful that you had me on here. I think that this is probably a good, like, starter snippet in a sense. I'll definitely address the lyrics and clean up some of that stuff too at a certain point, because I know, just people in Washington just aren't used to being spoken to like this, right? And
well, that's a one thing I want to bring up, is you keep labeling yourself as the bad guy, but I want to take a minute and just kind of remind you of some of the other bad guys out here that are literally fighting the same fight that you're trying to fight right now.
Mm.
Them being this guy right behind me, okay?
Mm.
Mental health battle. Him,
Absolutely.
Chris Calico, and another big one right now is King ISO are fighting
Absolutely.
big time about the entire stigma that comes with any form of mental illness, whether it be bipolar, like anything. It once, unfortunately, once you get a label, it is so hard to break away from that, and it's not fair because an astounding amount of people all over the world have a mental illness. So
Yep.
it's, it's not fair for us to judge anyone when almost 90% of the time you probably have one yourself. It's just not diagnosed.
Right. And it comes into the whole thing about diagnoses. Again, when they came and told me I was bipolar, I'm in my little psych ward room. I'm a blue scrubs on. I'm sitting on the bed, reading a book. Right. The four doctors come in because I've given them so much shit at this point, but I'd given up, so I was just reading a book. And they're like, Mr. Feldman, we have your diagnosis. I look up and I'm like, oh, great. That means maybe I could leave. And I'm just like, hit me. What is it? Right. They're like, you're bipolar manic 1. And I was like, thank God. The way y'all were treating me, I thought it was insane, And because I've never judged others, where if you're bipolar, if you have schizophrenia, if you have these things, it's possible to have the symptoms, right? The disorder is only a disorder if it's deregulating your life, right? So the whole thing about it was that it's not that it bothered me. It didn't. I was just like, okay, if that's what it is, then I've always felt different in the sense that I looked at the world differently. Until I started studying autism, I didn't realize that was really what it was for me, because I have a tick. I'm bad at I hit the 100 things that they look for. I hit like 99 of them for high functioning. But I camouflage, no pun intended, which is where you act like other people really well, to the point where I had forgotten so much that I was camouflaging, right? And this whole, they call it unmasking in the autistic community, and for ASD, that's really what it is. And it's been I've been artistic because in my way of doing things, I don't know what else to do, and trying to express this story. But it really roots into simple things, and I appreciate the comparison to ISO Tech and to Cali, because I adore them for that work alone. Of course, I love their music, but that work is one of the reasons I love the Strange community. Like when I go play shows there and I meet the people there, and like, or if I go and just to kick it or whatever, like, it's such a beautiful community. It's one of the reasons I watched it online as a kid, because I was at military school. I couldn't go to any of the shows, and when I got involved into it directly through Jerry Robinson and Tara and the FBA crew, and obviously went to Strange and stuff, it was something that was a phenomenal honor because of the community around it. So I'm really thankful for the Strange community, and for these, the open-mindedness of it, and the non-judgmental, and the fact that people come into this Strange community because they were other and different, weird or whatever. And I love that. I would sit there and just be like, wow, this is way more fun than some of the shows I'd play at New York, or with like the cool kids, the pop acts, like, whatever, right? Like, those are fun too. Like, I don't mind. I like singing happy songs. I just played a show with Bruno Mars's and Anderson .Paak's band member, and he was, holy shit, they're good at music. And it was so much fun and an honor. But it was a different crowd, and I loved it. But at my heart and soul, there's always going to be a soft spot for the kid that grew up listening to rap because he was being bullied and he didn't understand himself. And it's ultimately why in my art, especially right now, I'm focused on that type of music, because it saved me, and hopefully someone that listens to the album and listens to my music, it can help them battle whatever the fuck they're battling, because I went through some shit. But I can say on the other side of it, thank God, I'm a happy, sober, sane person. And it took a few lumps to get here. I certainly didn't do it perfectly, but the reason it was an advocacy campaign is I'm not in a position to allow my rights to be violated that way. And it took Britney Spears 25 years to get her name back. and it's just something I just can't do. I'm at 29 years old. I fortunately am able to see these types of patterns for what they are.
Well,
I
and I unfortunately have, I have some very close family members that are unfortunately very young and dealing with a lot of the mental health system, and that's something that needs to be brought out.
Yeah,
The attention on the neglect that, again, not all of these people show, but there are weak links within our system and
absolutely.
address, and they need to be, in my opinion, they need to be eliminated, because that's a big
Mhm.
reason why America, as one example, cannot grow, because we cannot, as a whole community, rely on each other on how to
Right.
fix a mental problem. We just constantly ignore signs and want to put labels on people instead of trying to actively help people. So we need people like you digging into these systems and getting those weeds out of there, because
You
the
have
sooner
to.
you can do it, the sooner hopefully it can trickle down. And like I said, I've already seen it happening in the younger generations, and that makes me so sad and so sick and depressed that our younger generation is literally has no foot to stand on. If they have
No.
illness until they're 18, and even then, there is nothing out there for them. There is absolutely
Mhm.
no help offered. And I know
Mhm.
this because I know someone currently going through this, and there's zero we can do.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, look, I one of the reasons that I talk often about politics in why that came up in the stuff, and I had reached out to my family in politics, was for that, right? Like I care about, because I saw the I grew up around government. Like, change does happen. It does. People give up because they don't believe they can make a change, right? That's not, through history. That's just not. Look, if people that made massive, even whether it was tech, right, in music, being like, I can make with Trav, I can make strange music, I can do this type of sound, it would never have happened. They had to believe in the movement that they were creating, the social impact. That's ultimately what Social Turtle, the company that's over everything I do, is about, is growing together. Social change through business and how we interact with each other, growing together. Because I was very blessed to have and see a lot of the things I did growing up, but without hip hop, I wouldn't be here. Hip hop is ultimately what the culture of hip hop and all of that is what saved me from just a massive amount of bullying, trauma, and different stuff in my childhood, where I saw rappers that just fascinated me in their confidence and being able to stand up and talk about things and social change in their communities. And I was just like, and they it just, I just was just like, whoa, this is dope. And because someone had asked me to freestyle when I was 12, I did it once and I never stopped. And I'm thankful that my career got to this place at this point. I do have to go because I'm supposed to meet my mom to continue working on this, which I'm very happy for dinner. So I'm gonna need to cut it probably here, but thank you so much for the platform and for an opportunity to talk about everything that's going on, because I just think it's important to continue to clear the air. I love my family. A lot of the language that was used, I'm gonna add the context. There was reasons I screenshot it and presented it a certain way, was because ultimately I was calling for help from my family and other people, but because of the stigma of mental health, and I don't blame anyone for this, they weren't listening. And that way at this point I was able to get people to listen, and it's like, okay, like, let me be clear here where the problem is, because it's not them. you know and so thank you.
No, man, I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule and all of this stuff to come on here and explain a little bit, so we, can understand what's going on and feel with you instead of be against you, and be,
100%.
like, I'm glad that I could be here to help you out. And
Thank you so
thank
much, I appreciate it.
Yeah, good luck with your dinner tonight, man. I wish you all the best in everything you have going on in your future.
Of course, we'll see each other soon. Ciao.